Hello and welcome to my 5-year Cancerversary live stream. Today I am celebrating being alive 5 years after receiving my cancer diagnosis exactly 5 years ago today. So in this live stream, I'm going to talk about what it was like going through a cancer diagnosis, talk to you about like the symptoms, the diagnosis itself, go into what treatment was like, and talk about how cancer impacts my life today, still 5 years later. And then also just celebrating still being alive. So every 15 minutes, I am going to be having a toast for celebrating all of these wonderful things. So go on ahead and make sure, if you haven't already, to grab a beverage of choice so that you can toast with me. If you've already got your glass ready, go on and drop a little toasting emoji down in the chat, or let me know what you're going to be drinking for your toast. It's only noon here, Mountain Time, so I am drinking some sparkling cider today in my glass. So let's go on ahead and let's get started. So for anyone that is just joining me here on Life as a Cancer Survivor for the first time, let me introduce myself to you. So my name is Jelena, and I was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer at age 34. Exactly 5 years ago today was when I found out that the mass that was found during my colonoscopy was indeed cancer. So I had no idea how serious it was, and I had no idea if I was even going to be alive 5 years later. So thank goodness I am. So while I am introducing myself, let me just hop right into the story of how I ended up being diagnosed with colorectal cancer and what my treatment looked like. So feel free to go on ahead and drop any questions that you have as I'm telling my story in the chat, or just questions in general that you might have, and I will answer as many of them as I can. So let me get started here with when I first started experiencing my symptoms. So the symptoms started in about June of 2015, so almost a year before my diagnosis. But I wasn't sure that it actually was cancer. I didn't know what was going on. So my first symptoms was actually just one, and it was really smelly gas. So everyone kind of has their own brand of gas that they release. So it's smelly usually, but you know what the smell smells like. So I could tell it was different. It was way more potent too, and I was having more frequent gas. So I kind of dealt with it for like 2 months, and then August 2015 rolled around, and I was like, well, maybe like something's going wrong in my digestive system or something like that. So I decided to start trying to take a probiotic to see if that would help at all. So I went to the natural food store, got probiotics, started taking them, and then it didn't help my gas, and it actually caused me to start bleeding when I would pass gas and when I was passing stool. So I knew that wasn't necessarily good. So I stopped taking the probiotics and the bleeding stopped. So I thought, well, maybe the probiotics were just bothering my system. So I kind of gave my body about 2 months to recover from the probiotics. And then in October, I started taking them again because I was still experiencing the smelly gas. Well, shortly after I started taking those probiotics again, the bleeding started up again when I was passing gas and when I would go to the bathroom. So stopped them again and thought, okay, I'm just going to have to deal with smelly gas for the rest of my life because these probiotics, they're not helping. So I went in for my annual physical in February of 2016. And at that physical, I mentioned to the nurse practitioner that I had experienced the blood when I was passing gas, passing stool, and that my gas had changed. So she asked if the bleeding was still happening, and it wasn't. So she said, well, if it does start up again, give our office a call, and we'll look into it and find out what's going on. So I kept that in the back of my head and just kind of went on with life. Then we come to May of 2016, and at the beginning of the month, the bleeding returned when I would pass gas, when I would go to the bathroom, and I wasn't taking any probiotics. So I called the doctor's office to get an appointment and got in a few days. And when that bleeding started up again, I started experiencing some diarrhea as well. And that was not normal for me. So when I went in about a week into May, the nurse practitioner, she had me go in to get a bunch of blood drawn. She was going to do a bunch of tests to see if I had any kind of food allergies, because food allergies could irritate your insides and could cause some bleeding, could cause some bad gas. And she also had me go on a gluten-free diet for the week while we waited for my blood test results to come back to see if that helped as well. So I had multiple vials of blood drawn, went on a gluten-free diet for a week. The gluten-free diet didn't help the symptoms at all. Symptoms didn't change. And then I went back in a week later. The blood test results all showed I wasn't allergic to any kind of foods. I think they tested like 40 different things. Not allergic to any of them. So she said, well, let's send you in for a colonoscopy just to check and see what's going on in there. So I got in within about 2 weeks and got the prep ready. I assumed, maybe I had some kind of like digestive disorder, like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, something like that. I couldn't have imagined that it was cancer. That wasn't really on my radar at all because I was only 34. I was healthy. I was active. I was a vegetarian. I wasn't a heavy drinker. I would just have a drink occasionally. I had none of the risk factors for being diagnosed with colorectal cancer. So I thought it was something else. So I went in for my colonoscopy on a Monday. When I woke up, the doctor said that she found a mass and she put a rush on the biopsy. She was pretty sure that it was cancer, but they wouldn't know for sure until the biopsy results came back. So the rush was pretty fast. 2 days later, on Wednesday, May 25th, 2016, the office called and said the results are in. You need to come to the office to talk with the doctor about what the results are. So I went in and that's when I found out. I didn't think that it was bad news even when we got to the office, when we were going from the waiting room to the doctor's office, or to her office in the building. She was chatting with us. She was super friendly and upbeat. So I thought, oh, well, this can't be bad news. And sure enough, as soon as she sat us down, she said, I'm sorry, but the test results came back and you do have cancer. It's colorectal cancer, more specifically rectal cancer. And I was just in shock. My husband was with me and all of us, the doctor, my husband and I, we just kind of cried for a minute. And then the doctor moved on and she said, okay, cancer diagnosis, not great news, but here's what's going to happen next. And she had the connections. She knew who to call. She contacted the imaging office for me to go in for a CT scan, the office for me to go in for a rectal ultrasound, and also the oncologist. And I think that was just the 3 initially because we didn't know how advanced it was. I don't remember if she contacted the radiation oncologist or if that was the regular oncologist that ended up connecting me with him. But either way, that was when I found out. It was, of course, like the worst day of your life when you find out that you've got cancer. And it's even worse when you have no idea how bad it is. So I knew there was this tumor in me. I knew it was big and bad enough that she couldn't just take it out during a colonoscopy. So it had to have been not good. But since it is, you can only see like in the rectum, inside the colon, you can't tell from a colonoscopy if it's spread anywhere from that. So you have to go in for more testing. So that was that's the symptoms leading up to my diagnosis. So for all of my viewers out there, I want to ask, how many of you have had a colonoscopy before? Let me know in the chat. Let me know yes if you've had one or no. Many of you may not be at an age where a colonoscopy is recommended yet, but if you've had one, let me know. They're not the most fun thing in the world, but it is a really important test for you to go in and take when you are of the age that you should be going in for a colonoscopy, which now in the United States, The guidelines have just recently changed, and if you are 45 years old or older, you should be going in to get screened for colorectal cancer. Doesn't necessarily have to be a colonoscopy. If you're low risk, aren't experiencing symptoms, there's at-home options available. And actually stay tuned, because coming up here soon in a couple weeks, I actually will be doing a video explaining multiple different colonoscopy screening options. So we've got that coming up here soon. So let's see, we've got a couple more minutes until it's time for our first toast. So let me talk a little bit about the tests that happened after I got my diagnosis to figure out exactly how severe the cancer was. So I got my diagnosis. It was a Wednesday, May 25th. That Friday, it was Memorial Day weekend. So tests weren't really going to be happening that weekend. My first up I had a CT scan. So I'd never had a CT scan, also known as a CAT scan, before. So I didn't really know what to expect. So at this imaging office, my appointment was for like 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. So I went in, I had to fast for a little bit beforehand. And when I got there, I was expecting that I was going to go right in and have my scan done. Well, no, I had to drink barium smoothies for the imaging. I had to drink 2 of them, and then after like the second one, I had to walk around a lot in the office to get it circulating through my body. And then at like 11 or something was when the actual CT scan ended up happening. So you get an IV for it, because they do have to inject contrast into you. They take images with and without the contrast. So they did that. Of course, they can't give you any results there. So I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have any answers after that. Then a day or 2 later, I went in for a rectal ultrasound. And for that, that's another one of those tests. I mean, since they're going in your rectum to look around, you have to be cleaned out. So I had to do another colonoscopy-like prep for that. And when I went in, I was put to sleep for that as well, thank goodness. So for that, I don't know the exact details, but it's basically they go in. The ultrasound is helpful for them to tell how many lymph nodes are involved, because in a CT scan with rectal cancer, other organs can kind of be in the way, and it's really hard to tell the lymph node involvement with that. So the rectal ultrasound, they could tell from that test. So when I woke up from it, they said there definitely was lymph node involvement. So that meant that I was going to be at least stage 3. And I just had to impatiently wait for those CT scan results to come back to find out if it was stage 3 or stage 4. So it is 12:15 right now. So if you're just joining me, my name is Jelena. I was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer in 2016, and I'm having this live stream today because it's the 5th anniversary of me finding out that I had cancer. So let's toast, grab your drinks, and we will do a toast for science saving my life and me still being here today. So cheers to all of you out there. Oh, all right. So let's see. All right, Miss Winnie, you had your first colonoscopy at 25. Wow, because of family history. Well, 25, it's not the ideal thing that you want to have to endure, but I'm glad that you did because of your family history. Because I was diagnosed at 34. My daughter, she's going to have her first one at basically the same age you did. So, and then Brandon, of course, you've had many, but you'll never have another. All right. So we've got some people also toasting along with me out there. Awesome. So now, let's see. I talked about the going in for a couple of tests, waiting for the CT scan results. So when I got the CT scan results back, it showed that the liver did not have any cancer on it. Lungs and everything were clear. So liver was clear. There was a lymph node in my lungs that lit up. So they weren't sure if it was just inflammation or if it was cancer that was up in my lungs. So since they couldn't tell from the CT scan, they sent me in for a PET scan. And if you're unfamiliar with a PET scan, it's like a CT scan on steroids. So you go in, for this one I actually went to the cancer center to have this one done. So you have to fast ahead of time for this test as well. The nurse comes in with this large or this heavy duty looking little like briefcase. And in that it has a syringe, which is also surrounded with lead. It's all covered with lead because inside of that syringe is radioactive sugar. And they inject that into your arm and it floats around in your body. Any place where there's cancer, the cancer attracts that radioactive tracer that they've injected into you. And any place in your body where there is cancer, it basically glows like a Christmas tree. So this is one time where Christmas is not a happy thing, where you don't want lights all over you because then that would mean that there's cancer all over inside of you. So when they inject that into you, you have to lay still for an hour before you can go back to get the test done because you've got to have time for what they injected in you to swirl around in your body and give time for the cancer to suck up the radioactive sugar. But if you move around, then that could lead to false positives because your muscles would be using sugar as well, and the muscles would attract that radioactive stuff as well. So you have to lay there, you go in, and it's done at my cancer center in the same machine that does the CT scans. So those results came back, and luckily the thing that lit up in my chest, it was not cancer. They graded on a scale from like 1 to 10. 1 means it's not cancer, 10 is like definitely cancer. It was a 1, so it was definitely not cancerous. So that meant I was definitely stage 3, and for stage 3 rectal cancer, there was a fairly straight, by the book kind of order to treatment that we found and that the doctor had told us about. So my treatment plan, the doctor laid that out for me. The oncologist laid it out for me. I was going to go through 28 days of radiation and oral chemotherapy. The oral chemotherapy I would take just on the days that I was going in for radiation. So just 5 days a week. And then I would rest for a little bit, heal from that. I would go in for surgery to remove the tumor. When I was diagnosed, the tumor was kind of in a spot in my rectum where it was up in the air. They weren't sure whether or not they were going to be able to salvage my rectum and sphincter or not. So they weren't sure whether I would have a temporary ileostomy that could be reversed during my surgery or if I would have to have a permanent colostomy. If I had surgery right off the bat, it was going to be a permanent colostomy for sure. But with the radiation, they said depending on which way the tumor shrank, I could just do the temporary ileostomy and may not have to have a permanent colostomy. So, and then after surgery, then they said depending on what they found in the surgery, how I responded to the initial chemo and radiation, then I would potentially have to do more chemotherapy, but this time it would be IV chemotherapy after surgery. So that was kind of my treatment plan from the beginning. So I did the 28 days of radiation and oral chemotherapy. That it started within about 2 weeks after my initial diagnosis. So once you receive that diagnosis, things move fast and it's like a whirlwind of tests, appointments, more appointments, and it flies by. It's a blur. I thankfully wrote down a lot of stuff, like every day, what I was feeling and what appointments I had to go to, what we were doing with my daughter that day, because I probably would not have remembered half of it if I had not written it down. And I was only good at the very beginning of writing everything down. But then I was kind of more active with saying what I was going through on social media afterwards, so I can kind of reference that. But radiation and the oral chemotherapy, it was tough, but it slowly kind of built up. I was really tired right away. I started napping daily right away, which I'm not a napper, so that was unusual and out of the ordinary. And then after a couple weeks, the radiation burns kind of started setting in. I didn't really have much on the outside. It was a little red and tender, but inside where they were aiming at the rectum, it was raw and it gives you diarrhea, so that doesn't help either. And the last week or two, it basically felt like I had a cactus up my butt. When I would walk, whenever I did anything moving around. So that was uncomfortable. I got some hemorrhoid suppositories, and that cream, it did help soothe it a little bit. It would work for a bit. But then, it's kind of hard to hold a cream inside of you for a while, especially when you're standing up. So it helped a bit. I also used some cooling spray on my butt to help soothe it a little bit as well. And that got me through it. Then my surgeon, he wanted to wait 3 months before my surgery because the tumor can continue to respond to the chemotherapy and the radiation even after you're done. So he wanted to give that tumor as big of an opportunity to shrink and get away from the sphincter as possible so that I would just end up with a temporary ostomy instead of a permanent one. So I waited 3 months. So in October of 2016 was when I had my surgery, which was called a lower anterior resection, also known as LAR surgery. So they took out 12 inches of my colon/rectum, 17 lymph nodes, and created an ileostomy. Because where they sew your colon and your rectum back together, my surgeon said for me, I would have about a 25% chance of that site leaking while it was healing. And you don't really want your waste that's passing through there leaking out and swirling out in your abdomen. That's really bad news. So that's why I ended up with my ileostomy. The tumor had shrank enough away from the sphincter that they said they could save it. They would just do the temporary ileostomy. So that's what I ended up with. A couple weeks later, they gave me about 6 weeks to heal from that. Before I went in, I got a port placed in my chest. You can still see the scar here. It's kind of healed up some. It's not as bad as it was, but that's where the port is entered or placed in you. There's a little tube called a catheter that goes into a vein that will go straight to your heart. And so then your chemotherapy goes straight into you because it can have a tendency to burn and just damage the veins in your arms because they're smaller. So the port was recommended for me. So I was like, sure, let's do that. Because then when you've got the port, whenever they access it, they gave me a cream, lidocaine cream to put on it. And it basically numbed it, so you didn't really feel anything. You could just kind of feel them pushing at your chest, but there was nothing pokey or stabby about it at all. So after surgery, I got the port, and then a couple of days, not quite a week after I got the port, was when I had my first round of the IV chemotherapy FOLFOX. And I did 8 rounds of FOLFOX. I finished those 8 rounds at the end of March in 2017. While I was going through FOLFOX, there was 1 week where the chemo was delayed by a week because my platelets had dropped too low. And so the platelets are what help your blood clot. So if they get too low, even just a minor cut, your blood would not clot. It wouldn't stop bleeding. So there's that danger. So I had 1 week to get those counts back up. They did recover, and then I didn't have to skip any more treatments after that. So after I finished my last round of FOLFOX, then my surgeon wanted to wait like 6 weeks after I finished that last round before reversing my ileostomy to give my body a chance to recover some, strengthen back up so that I could handle surgery and hopefully not have any severe complications. So I waited slightly longer than 6 weeks because about 6 weeks after when I finished chemo was a 10K race that I had done every year with friends, and I wanted to be able to do that race with friends before I had my reversal. So we waited like a week after that. So I had waited slightly longer, and then had that reversal in June of 2017. So the whole process was about a year from diagnosis and getting through treatment. So that's kind of what treatment looked like, my symptoms. So before I get into life after treatment, I'd love to hear from all of you out there where you're tuning in from. So if you can let me know in the chat where you're watching from, that'd be awesome. And let's see who is watching from the furthest away today. I live in Colorado, so let's see who is the furthest away from me here in Colorado. So let me give it a second before I start doing that. I'm going to grab a drink here while you're typing in where you guys are watching from. You can either do city, state, country, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, so we've got someone from San Jose. Awesome. And let's see what else we have. Ireland, but Brazilian. Cool. Saskatchewan, Canada. Awesome. We've got people from all over joining today. Hey, hello and welcome. Let's see. What else do we have in here? Oh, I missed Miss Winnie. Unfortunately, your GI failed to inform you of Lynch syndrome. That is tough. And Lynch syndrome is kind of a recent, more, not super recent, but I know of a few others that had a colorectal cancer diagnosis at a young age, and then it returned. And at the time, they didn't understand Lynch or weren't aware of it. And so they found out later that that was Lynch syndrome. So I'm glad at least that you know now, and you know the risks, I'm sure, and how often and what you need to go in to be tested for. So hopefully if Lynch causes anything, they will catch it early because you know now that you've got it, and you are, I'm sure, staying on top of all of your screenings. And you're watching from Boston. Cool. All right, so let's see here. It is almost 12:30. So before I get into what life is like after I got that ileostomy reversal, let's do another toast here. So grab your drinks. So to this one, we will toast to celebrate my birthday. So in 3 days, I'm going to be 40. So I didn't know 5 years ago if I was going to be here for my 40th birthday. But now that I have made it through this cancer diagnosis, I'm proud to say that I've made it to 40. Earlier in my 30s, I was not super excited about aging, but now that I've had this cancer scare, I feel lucky to be able to still be here and celebrate 40. So this year, I'm excited to hit 40 and get a little bit older. So cheers to that. And yeah, cheers to all of you out there. So let's see. Oh, so Brandon here, you are going down Interstate 10, heading west, going to Corpus Christi. Okay. So let's see. I think here, I believe Ireland is our furthest person here. So congratulations to Leila. You are watching from the furthest away of who wants to type in where you're coming from or where you're watching from. So awesome. Let's see. And thank you, Lisa. I am hoping to, you're hoping to make it to 50. Yeah, cancer definitely puts birthdays into perspective and makes you appreciate life even more than you did before. So, I've gone through the treatment and everything. And yeah, if you have any other questions or anything, go on and you can drop them in the chat. But I'm going to talk about what happens after treatment is over now. So for me, my follow-up schedule I was going in every 3 months to my oncologist's office for blood work. They would draw my blood before I would go in and actually meet with the oncologist. So what they were checking for in my blood, the primary thing they were looking for was my CEA levels. So CEA, it stands for carcinoembryonic antigen. And that it's a protein that's found in your blood when there is active tumor activity in your body. It's not always the best indicator for people, but it's the easiest and least invasive way to kind of check for tumor activity in people without doing any kind of scans, which scans, there's a limited, or the scans, they will use radiation to do those scans, so they don't want to do them if it's not necessary. So the blood work is the easiest way. So they check that. They also look at just your general panel of how, like, your platelets, your white blood cell count, and any other things that were dropping and got messed up because of treatment. They want to kind of watch that and make sure that those are recovering as well. So every 3 months I would go in for that, and then every 6 months I was going in for CT scans. Now, the day after I finished chemotherapy, so the IV chemotherapy that I did FOLFOX, I would go in for like a 3.5 hour infusion, and then I would go home with a pump that was attached to my port, and it had a tube, and the tube went to the pump. That would dispense chemotherapy for another 46 hours after I left the cancer center. So when the day that I got that detached, that night, I woke up maybe at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I had this bad pain in my stomach. Well, turns out that I had an intestinal blockage. But I didn't know what was going on. It was severe. We were going to drive to the hospital, but by the time I made it downstairs, and my husband and I decided, yeah, maybe I should go to the hospital. The pain was so severe I couldn't even get up off the floor to get my coat on. So my husband called 911. An ambulance came and took me to the hospital, and they didn't know what was going on. They just knew I had abdominal pain. So they did a CT scan for me right there at the hospital there. So I wouldn't have necessarily had a CT scan the day after I finished chemo, but they did one to figure out what was causing that severe pain. And it turns out that CT scan showed that I had no evidence of cancer in my body. So even though I ended up in the hospital, it was not a fun experience. It was worth it to find out that there was no more cancer in my body and that I was declared NED, or had no evidence of the disease in me. And so then they did the next CT scan 6 months from that, and that was kind of the starting point for determining how often, or what the starting point was for when I would get my scans every 6 months. Typically after the first year, sometimes they'll slow it down to like every 4 months that you would go in for your blood work. But my oncologist wanted to be aggressive with his monitoring of me because I was so young and didn't really have any risk factors, including a family history. So he wanted to stay on top of my health and make sure that if the cancer came back, that they would catch it early and be able to treat it quickly before it did any damage or did more damage inside of me. So I continued to go in every 3 months for the first 2 to 3 years. And after 3 years, then he spaced it out to every 4 months and just a CT scan once a year. And just recently at my appointment in August of last year, so August of 2020, which was like 3.5 years. I guess it's coming up, yeah. 3.5, 4 years after, he's spaced out my appointments with him to every 6 months and just the CT scan once a year. My CEA levels, for the beginning, they were undetectable or under 0.5. Anything under 4 to 5 is what you're looking for. It has fluctuated a tiny bit. The highest was like 1.3, I believe, which is still way low in the normal range. But it makes you a little nervous when it just like those little fluctuations. It's a little nerve-wracking when you know what is on the horizon, if that means that the cancer is back, because you've already been through the chemo, the radiation, the surgeries, and you don't want to have to go through that again. So all of those memories of that kind of come flashing back when you're going in to get all of this checked out. You're nervous, you're scared about what they're going to find, but if they find something, you're hoping that it's going to be early and everything's going to be okay. So while I was going through treatment, as far as my mental health went, I thought everything was okay. When I got my diagnosis, the prognosis was good for a cancer diagnosis. My doctor, my oncologist, he said that he thought he could cure me, which I thought was a pretty aggressive comment for an oncologist, because that's a pretty strong word to use when you never know how somebody is going to react to cancer treatment. So I was pretty confident that he was going to be able to get rid of this cancer. So I thought, I just have to go through treatment. I've got, step 1, radiation and chemo. Step 2, surgery. Step 3, more chemo. Step 4, get my ileostomy reversed. And I thought, okay, I just have these things. I was just like checking the boxes as I was going through treatment. And then I thought once it was all done, then things would return back to normal. Well, after your ileostomy gets reversed, it's not quite normal. I still, to this day, it is almost 4 years later after I had the ileostomy reversed, and I still have to take stuff daily. I do Metamucil daily right now to bulk my stools up, because if I don't take anything, it's diarrhea. So I take Metamucil daily so that my stools look normal and so that it comes out more in fewer visits to the bathroom. I've gone through taking that. I've done Imodium many times a day. I've tried different probiotics, tried doing some modifications to my diet, and it's just things change from day to day, from week to week, month to month as to what works, what doesn't. My most recent colonoscopy that I did last October, basically hit the reset button on my entire digestive system. And so, everything was cleared out, so you don't go for a day or two after the colonoscopy. And then I was like, okay, well, let me see if I can just manage with just the psyllium husk or the Metamucil. And I've managed since then to only do that first thing in the morning. Occasionally I'll have a bad day and I will have to take some Imodium, but I was going through boxes and boxes of it before, and it's calmed down. But things still aren't normal in the bathroom. So there's that. And then just after being diagnosed with cancer, you've got that cloud looming over your head, and it's hit you once and it came out of nowhere for me. So it could come out of nowhere again. And so every time you go in and you're getting those test results back for your monitoring, you're nervous, you're scared about what they're going to find. Finally, 3 years after my diagnosis, the mental part of it caught up to me. And so it was exactly 3 years after my diagnosis, so exactly 2 years ago today, I started having daily panic attacks. And it seemed like they were just coming out of nowhere. The back of my neck, it started going numb. My heart was beating fast. And just my mind had these horrible thoughts racing through it that I couldn't derail and stop from happening. And that was not anything that I'd ever experienced before. So with those happening multiple times a day, I realized, maybe, the mental aspect of being diagnosed with cancer and like coming face to face with death finally caught up to me. So it was tough getting help, especially when you are like actively, you're having all of these attacks and your mind is racing and everything. You want to get help right away. But, as you know, it was Memorial Day weekend-ish when I was diagnosed. So that's when these attacks started happening. So it was a holiday weekend. Doctor's office wasn't open. I tried going to an urgent care. I went to one, like a minute clinic kind of thing at a grocery store. They couldn't do anything for me, so they sent me to an urgent care. The urgent care didn't want to deal with any mental health troubles because by the time I got there, wasn't actively having a panic attack. So I got bounced around for a bit. Finally, I just made it into my doctor's office, and they prescribed me some medication, both long-term medication that I could take daily that would help me or not necessarily stabilize mentally, but to help calm myself down, and then just Ativan to help when I was having those panic attacks to calm myself down. So when I took the Ativan, within a half hour, I was completely out. My husband had never seen me fall asleep so fast when I took that, and was like out. So that was only for when I was actively getting a panic attack. But that was happening daily. So I was taking it daily. And eventually the long-term medication finally started kicking in, and I finally was feeling a little better, didn't need the on-demand medication anymore. And so I took the daily medication for about a year and a half. 2019, about 9 months. Okay. I was trying to remember. So, yeah, it was in 2019. No, 20. Okay. Think. Do. A little bit of chemo brain hitting. It was not in 2020. It was in 2019. No, because it was 3 years after my diagnosis. Yes, and it was 2016 when I was diagnosed, so 2019. Okay. And then I stopped. So it was May 2019, and then I took the medication until the doctor said, take it at least through the holidays, and then you can think about, weaning yourself off of it. So I talked with her in January about weaning myself off the medication. And the first time I tried weaning myself off, it didn't work. I could feel the anxiety coming back. So went back to the normal dose. And I believe it was about April of last year that I managed to wean myself off of it. And so it's been about a year now that I've been off of the anxiety medication. So that was quite a turbulent ride because I had never had any mental health troubles before. So it was different trying to navigate that. And it's a completely different experience trying to navigate getting a mental health diagnosis because it's not necessarily something tangible that a doctor can see versus cancer. You can see the tumor. They know exactly what to do. Or, you've got a broken arm, they know what to do. But when it's something mental, they can't necessarily see what's going on. So they have to have more faith in what you as the patient is describing as to what you're experiencing. So that was a tough part that I had to go through after the diagnosis. So it's been another 15 minutes here. So if you're just joining, although we've been on for a little bit, my name is Jelena. I was diagnosed with stage 3 rectal cancer in 2016, and I'm having this live stream today because it's the 5th anniversary of me finding out that a mass that was found in my rectum was indeed cancer. So We'll do one more toast here, so grab your glass. This final toast to finish my live stream, this one is to all the viewers out there. So thank you guys for tuning in and supporting my channel. If you've liked the videos and this live stream, please share them with a friend out there. But thank you guys so much for your support. So this toast is to all of you out there. Thank you for tuning in and watching. This channel wouldn't be where it is today without you guys. Okay, so I will move over to the chat here because I've got some conversations that I want to talk about real quick here or mention. So let's see. So let's see. Lisa, oncologist, hope to cure you too. Oh no, but unfortunately the original surgeon didn't get all of your cancer, so you're totally not normal after your colostomy reversal either. It's pretty good, but not perfect. So yeah, you feel me. So yeah, there's the normal days and the not normal days. And let's see, what else do we have here? So Brandon, you still have your ileostomy. You're wondering if I regret getting the reversal. Was the bag better? Let's see here. I do not regret. I still don't. There's occasionally I'll have a day where I'm like, why I feel like it would be better with the bag, but that's maybe like 1 or 2 days a year that things get bad enough that I kind of reconsider whether or not I had it reversed. But overall, I'm happy with my decision to reverse my ileostomy. I had it for 7 months and it was active all the time. So even during bag changes, I tried eating marshmallows. I tried just not eating at all for hours before doing the bag changes. No matter what I did, it was still spurting all the time. So it was tough doing the changes. I liked to try and shower occasionally without the bag on, and it would just poop all over in the shower, which I was fine with. I would just clean the shower really well afterwards, but it got annoying. And then I started developing an allergy to the adhesive that the barrier used to stick to me. So that got all red and raw. So the ileostomy was not really a picnic either for me. So I'm happy that I got it reversed. Some days are better than others, but still, 4 years later, I don't regret having the ileostomy reversed. And it just varies from person to person. And unfortunately, I don't feel like there's really any good predictor that can kind of give you some kind of idea as to what the outcome is going to be. If it's going to be good, bad, or easy, difficult, how long it's going to take before it kind of normalizes to what it's going to be like for the rest of your life. So it's a tough decision, and it's a very personal decision that you have to make and just kind of weigh the pros and cons of having the bag and not having the bag. Let's see. Oh, has anyone read the book called The Body Keeps the Score? I have not, but I have heard about it, and something mentioned it. I don't read as much as I should, so maybe that will be one of my first books that I get in and maybe start reading over the summer a little bit more. A little goal. My daughter, she's 10 and she loves to read. She always has her nose in a book when we're driving around, at home, if she doesn't have any friends around to play with. At that time, she's reading, so maybe I'll check that book out and read it. Okay, so let's see. One question about what my CEA level was before chemo and after. They never checked my CEA before I started or finished treatment. So I don't know what it was, which I wish they had. My oncologist said it's not necessarily important to check it ahead of time, but I feel like if they had checked it before I started treatment, then we would have known if it was a good indicator or not. as to whether or not there was tumor activity, because if I still had a CEA that was really low, then we would know that it's not a good predictor of whether or not there's activity in me or not. But I didn't get it checked until after I had finished treatment. And for like a year and a half after I finished treatment, it was at the undetectable under 0.5 level. So that's the path of my CEA. And so that is basically all that I have for this live stream. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and coming to join me for this special celebratory live stream. So happy you guys all could join me. I am thankful that I am still here 5 years after my diagnosis, and hope to keep putting out lots of great content for you guys. Like I mentioned, I'll be doing a video on what the different colorectal cancer screening tests are. I'll be doing a video coming up here shortly as well about what do I do if I think that I maybe have colorectal cancer? What are these symptoms that I'm experiencing? So look for those coming up here soon. If you're not subscribed, make sure that you have. Let's see here if I can get that. Yes. So click on the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this live stream and you haven't hit the like button yet, go on ahead and click that like button for me. If you're not following me on any social media yet, you can find me over on Instagram. I'm colorado.jelena. Over on Facebook, I've got a Life as a Cancer Survivor page that you can follow me on over there. Twitter, I'm not super active, but I'm on there if you want to follow me there. If that's all you're on, it's survivor_Jelena. And if you go into the description for this live stream, the links to all of those are listed in there. So thank you all again for tuning in. I'll do one more cheers. Thanks you. And here is to all of us living a happy, healthy day today, and hopefully, to health for all of you. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.